One thing that I noticed a lot in the community is that a lot of people just really are confused on how to scale Ryu Ishigori, because you have a lot of people scaling very lowly, and I'm not even kidding, there are a lot of people that actually think he's grade 1 level, and then of course you have people who think he's special grade level or high tier special grade level, but where does he actually lie? Just how strong is this man? Because his fight with Yuta and Uro was just really cool. Beside the fact that he has a very sweet and nice personality, he's a very cool guy as well, and just everything about him is just really cool, especially his jacket, his hair. He really looks like Josuke's cousin or brother or something, as I'm sure you've seen those comparison memes before. But today we're just going to break down how strong is he? Where does he scale in the Jujutsu Kaisen world? Let's get into that today. And by the way, thank you to all the Honored One and Special Grade members of the channel. You guys make these videos possible. Alright, to start off with, why do people think he's not special grade level? Where there seems to be this kind of headcanon-y implication by the fanbase that all of the special grades in the series have this kind of infinity theme too. Now, I don't know if it's ever been said in a data book or if it's really just a fan theory that's taken off, because I see this said quite a lot by a lot of people, how all the special grades currently have the infinity theme. So for example, Principal Yaga, who's being considered to be special grade, had the theme of making an infinite amount of curse corpses. And then of course we have Gojo with his infinity, and literally his whole ability is to do with infinity and all that crazy stuff. We have Geto, who can take an infinite amount of curses into him or control an infinite amount of curses. And then Yuta's where it gets really interesting, because the Japanese term of infinity actually has two meanings. Now of course the infinity that you're all probably thinking of is infinity as in literally infinite. There is no end, there is no limit. However, in Japanese, terms like omniscient, omnipotence, omnipresent, and all these things, as well as the term infinity, can a lot of times just mean very great or greatest or most thereof. So then with this definition of infinity not necessarily meaning never ending, but just meaning either the greatest or just a very, very great amount, you can see how this actually fits into Yuta, who has the greatest amount of cursed energy. So for example, he doesn't have a limitless amount, as we know. Well, I guess in the 5 minutes technically he does with the Rika supply, but that's not for a limitless amount of time. However, what Yuta does have is a large amount of cursed energy, which is said to be the greatest amount. So you can actually see in the Japanese term, which obviously this is a Japanese manga, so that's why I'm using these definitions, can be seen as an infinite amount, so he'd be classified in this infinite category. Now again, if this is a databook thing or if this is actually just a fan theory thing, let me know, because I've seen this being said quite a lot by a lot of people. And of course we have Yuki. We don't exactly know what her abilities are. I made a whole video on her, actually in my second previous video, but she probably may have something to do with Shikigami. The most popular theory is the infinite Shikigami theory, though I personally don't subscribe to that theory. It probably is true though. Now, why does this fit into Ryu Ishigori, or I guess why do people think he's not special grade because of this term? Now people think, oh wow, Ishigori can't be special grade because he doesn't have the infinity concept applied to him, which again could just be a headcanon community thing. But let's go with the assumption that it is true, that all the special grade capable level fighters have this infinity category that's needed for them to be a special grade, which again doesn't make sense because special grade has a lot of meanings. Let's just be real, it's just someone who's very, very strong and can't be controlled, or probably has the ability to wipe out a nation or something. Or their power is just unprecedented, one of the strongest. That's pretty much what a special grade is, which I guess you can say goes hand in hand with the infinity concept, but it isn't exactly the same, is it? But now a lot of people say Ishigori and Uro and Kashimo can't be special grades because they don't have this quote-unquote infinite concept. Well, actually, if you consider Yuta a special grade, which of course he is, and if you fit him into this infinite category, because of course he has the greatest, or I guess infinite amount of cursed energy, again, the actual term in Japanese meaning just very great, a large amount, or the most, which actually does fit Yuta, then this literally would fit Ryu Ishigori, since he has an infinite amount of output. Now again, this just means very great or the most, which was literally said by the author that Ryu Ishigori has the most output in all of the characters ever. Now of course this was pre-Gojo or pre-Yuta, but we know for a fact his output far surpasses Yuta, though of course Yuta does make up for it for better reinforcement. But again, he has more cursed output than Sukuna, and that's confirmed as well by Kenjaku the man himself, and by all the other sorcerers who have existed. So again, in this term you can actually see why this fits into Ryu Ishigori, because he has the most in history, or just a very large amount. At the very least, he is number one in the amount of cursed energy that he can output. Again, this doesn't mean he's the strongest. There are so many more things to a fight. This is not Dragon Ball Z or Seven Deadly Sins or something that just scales with power levels and such. There are very, very in-depth and complicated abilities in the series. So output is not everything. As we also saw, Ryu Ishigori did not win the free-for-all brawl between him, Yuta, Uro, and also the cockroach. So in terms of that aspect, I just wanted to clarify that Ryu Ishigori does actually fit into this infinity term, which again, I don't even subscribe to that concept or idea. Maybe it's been said in a day, but I'm not going to do dwell on it too much, that's just why I would consider him a special grade, even though the argument is being made in the community. And for some reason, some people can't actually understand what the term infinity means, because a lot of people classify Yuta as that. It's just a whole mess. Now that we've established that my man, my main boy, Ryu Ishigori is special grade caliber, at the very least with whatever definitions you have, how strong is he? Now, he was absolutely dominating Yuta in terms of hand-to-hand. Now, of course, Yuta is far more than a hand-to-hand combat. He is a jack-of-all trades fighter, and he relies mostly on his abilities because his ability is quite broken, to be honest. But at the very least, in terms of hand-to-hand, he far surpasses Yuta. It's not even a question. I will clarify this later down the line, but now I'm just going to be talking about his abilities and comparing that to characters like Yuta and Uro. Obviously, his output is just so deadly that no one can actually tank it. Of course, when he hit Uro, who of course, to be fair, did not have her ability to block it because her ability actually counters his ability. But when she actually just took it raw, no rubbish, straight to the guts, it literally just knocked her out instantly. And of course, we've seen that with Yuta. Now, obviously, this is another big misconception because a lot of people actually really don't understand this Sendai fight, or at the very least have done terrible analysis on this Sendai fight. And I made a whole video about it. It's called Yuta is Underrated. To be honest, the video is just mostly a Sendai analysis fight, but it's mostly actually Yuta fans who really misunderstand this entire fight and pretty much take everything out of context and only look at things that in a way that benefits Yuta, which is kind of crazy. But hey, it is what it is. Now, people actually think Yuta can tank this. No, he can't. Now, the reason people think this, let me clarify, is because there was a point where he actually deflected a blast that was coming at him, and even Ishigori is surprised, saying, damn, he actually deflected that. Now, here's the thing. Ishigori has many types of output blasts, or granite blast. I like to call it Rante blast. It's a Bleach reference. I just think it's cool, so I'm going to be referring it to that. Sorry if that annoys you. Yuta cannot tank this, as we've seen it being said by Ishigori himself. Whenever Yuta's actually hit by these, he needs to, and I mean he 100% needs to, heal himself with reverse cursed energy, or technique, sorry. As we've seen many times when he's hit by it, he needs to heal from it. And of course, the one time, by the way, this is just an extremely ballsy and just beastly move from Yuta. I really like this scene because Yuta does not flinch while he does this. He actually goes to punch Ishigori point blank. No deflecting, nothing. He's literally just trying to punch through the blast right at his head, and it's literally atomizing and turning his hand to dust. As we see, the blast actually does force Yuta back, and his hand is completely disintegrated. There is nothing left. So this goes to show Yuta cannot stop this blast. At the very least, he cannot tank it without reverse curse technique to heal himself. Now, back to my main point where I kind of deferred from because I went on a small tangent. Yuta basically deflects a blast at some point in the fight, which again, Ishigori was surprised, as I've already said, but people really confuse this feat to be a power feat. I don't want to downplay Yuta. This is very impressive from Yuta. It's actually a skill feat, not a power feat. So he's not tanking the Grante blast, he's just deflecting, which are two very different things. He's not strong enough to power through it, as we have literally seen in so many instances. He cannot power through that. It will literally kill him, knock him out, or he will need to heal from it. However, what he can do, which is an attribute to his skill as a fighter, is deflect the blast. And of course, this is only with the smaller blasts, as there seem to be two types of blasts, as we know that Ryu Ishigori needs to charge up his blasts, his cursed energy output shots, and the more he charges them up, the stronger they become, but also the bigger they become, which is something people really don't seem to understand for some reason, which again has been shown in multiple instances. The main instance being when they were both firing at each other and they were both building up cursed energy. We can see that was a massive blast from him and far stronger than what we normally see. And there's also the blast that he starts the fight with when he catches Uro and Yuta off guard. He definitely built up charge for that blast, and that's why that blast was just so massive that it leveled multiple buildings and blocks. It was kind of crazy. The blast that Yuta deflects is a pretty short and quick one. I'm not saying it's a weak blast by any means, it's still pretty strong, but that is the one that he deflects. If you want to say that maybe Yuta can deflect the massive Grante blasts that have charged up, I really don't think he can do that, by the way, as he would have done it when he was first shot by it. Well, you could say he's caught off guard, but still, it's just too big. It's not like a small blast where you can just cut through it. Now, of course, a lot of people are really confused by output and reinforcement, and I'll briefly, and yes, I mean very briefly, touch on this because a lot of people, I want to say at least 90% of the community, have absolutely no idea what the difference is between the two, or they think they have an idea between the two, and they're just completely wrong. And I've spoken about this over the months in many live streams. At one point, even for an hour, I actually spent just talking about this topic to my chat. So I'll briefly break that down here because, of course, this is important to Ishigori because, of course, he's the man of the greatest output. So what is output? Output is basically how much cursed energy you can literally output. So for example, let's say Ishigori has a cursed energy output of 1 million. That is just a random made up number. It has no meaning. If Ishigori wanted to, he could use, let's say, 10,000 of his cursed energy at one point. So this could be for anything, for defending, for attacking, for using in blasts, which would be the most most out of all sorcerers, because every sorcerer can output a different amount. So say for example, maybe the average is 100, some sorcerers can do 500, 600, some of the strongest can do 1,000, and then we have characters like Ishigori who has 10,000. And now output is very impressive because it can be translated both in offense and in defense, because output helps in all that way. Now the thing that people get confused about, this is what I need to explain, is cursed energy reinforcement, which is something all sorcerers use. Now keep in mind, I want to clarify, all sorcerers use both output and reinforcement, they just combine the two. It's kind of like something that's always being used. It's not like some people only use one or some people use one or the other. Yuta and Ishigori, both of them use reinforcement and output. It just happens to be that these two fighters happen to specialize quite a lot in the other aspects. However, that doesn't mean they're not using the other. So what I'm saying is, maybe Ishigori's output is obviously insane, but his reinforcement might just be decent or okay, or it might even be pretty good. But what makes him special is of course the output. That's what he specializes. And this also applies to Yuta. Yuta's output might be okay, it might be decent, at the very least compared to Ishigori, which again might be unfair because Ishigori has the greatest in all of history. But in Ishigori's own words, he says it's nothing special, or at the very least it's decent. Or I think he even uses average. It just depends on which translation you use. At the very least, he thinks it's nothing. But of course, Yuta makes up for this in his vast amount of reinforcement, and this is only possible because of the amount of cursed energy he has. Now, the difference between output and reinforcement is you're literally shrouding your body in cursed energy to basically enhance yourself. As this has been said by Gojo, by Ogi Zenin, Yuta, Maki, Yuji, and just a ton of other characters, that this is pretty much what reinforcement is. So think about it like this: the more cursed energy you have around you or in a certain spot, the stronger you are. And I think you might be remembering the Todo example where there's great panels that show this, and even in Yuji versus Yuta, where Yuji very clearly explained this, and for some reason it's right in the manga when Yuji is fighting Yuta and everyone just forgets or just can't read or something, I don't know. But it doesn't matter that Yuta's output may be average or decent or even pretty good. Yuta has so much cursed energy that when he reinforces himself, he is just shrouded in a massive coat of aura. Here's the thing that confuses most people though: cursed energy output and cursed energy reinforcement essentially do the same thing. They boost your physical stats, so speed, defense, offense, durability. It boosts all of them. They literally do the same thing, but the key thing is they do it in a different way, if that makes sense. Now, I wanted to clarify this distinction because I know for a fact, because I always get these comments, people are so confused on cursed energy output and reinforcement, they can't tell what the difference is. Because whenever I say Yuta has a mediocre output, or if I say Ishigori has a decent or mediocre reinforcement, people get confused and very upset on both sides, and that's because they just don't understand what I mean. And by the way, when I say mediocre or average, I just mean in terms of special grade level. That's what I mean. If we compare these guys to grade 1s, obviously they are probably far stronger in just these aspects compared to grade 1s. I'm just comparing them to the high tiers, like Sukuna, Gojo. So I hope that explains why I use these terms. And now back to the actual point of saying how strong Ishigori is. So basically, in terms of output, he's easily got Yuta outclassed, but here's the thing: he actually outclasses his reinforcement with his own output, because we've seen in multiple instances, yes, multiple instances, Yuta cannot even damage him hand to hand. When they tried to clash, when they were both at 100%, Yuta literally cannot even scratch him, while Ishigori sends him packing, flying, bleeding, and just all the bad things. To the point where even Rika, who's far stronger than Yuta, as this has been said by many characters, even in Sendai, she is the only one who can actually damage Ishigori. And it's pretty crazy because Ishigori can actually damage Rika, which is just absolutely crazy. I mean, this really goes to show you just how strong he is when he can casually go toe to toe and pound for pound with Rika of all things. Oh, and one quick distinction: Rika is actually not weaker compared to the JJK0. Rika is actually, if anything, stronger, at the bare minimum the same strength, but definitely I want to say stronger though, which is a massive misconception which is always brought up. And I'm going to briefly say the reason, because again, this is not a video on Yuta or Rika, but the reason this is because in Sendai they're fighting some of the strongest sorcerers in history, so of course Rika is not going to seem as strong when she's fighting these sorcerers compared to when she's fighting low tier bomb level curses in the JJK0 movie. The only difference is the time limit. But back to the main point: the reason that some people actually think Yuta stands a chance against Ishigori or is on the same tier in terms of hand to hand, or at least physical prowess, is because of the final scene in the fight, where Rika leaves and they're fighting hand to hand, and they actually seem pretty even. Now, I can understand why this confuses a lot of people. I've actually had to explain this quite a few times. The reason why they're fighting equally at that end, it's because Yuta is at full HP and full cursed energy, whereas Ishigori is literally on the verge of death and he barely has any cursed energy left. So let me explain. Basically, imagine after all of those fights and all of those hits Ishigori took from Rika and Yuta and just all this crazy stuff. Let's say Ishigori has has like 10% HP left, right? And in terms of cursed energy, with the amount that he's been spamming, of course using his domain expansion, and the amount of Garante blasts he's just used this entire fight, it's safe to assume that he probably has ran out in the tank. Again, his HP is like what, 10%, 15%? His cursed energy is probably like 5, 10% as well, or maybe even 15%. Now compare this to Yuta, who yes, had lost Rika before they'd begun the hand-to-hand, but the key thing is he had just lost Rika in that second. And when Rika's out, she is constantly funneling him with cursed energy all the time, which means he is constantly healing himself because he doesn't have to worry about using cursed energy. So even though Rika had left as they had started the hand-to-hand, Yuta was actually at full HP, or at the very least he was at like 70 or 80% HP. Honestly, I want to say he was at max, because saying he doesn't makes no sense in the logical sense. And at the bare minimum, Yuta had 100% of his cursed energy fully replenished. Because yes, once Rika leaves, it's not like she takes the cursed energy back. All that's lost is the link between the two, so he can no longer get cursed energy funneled from her. However, he still kept all the cursed energy that he had before she had left. I hope that makes sense. That's why in the start, they can't even go hand to hand at all. Literally, Ryu Ishigori with his shoulder bodies Yuta so badly, he just gets sent packing, and Ishigori is hyper clean like he had taken 3 showers back to back to back and did not have a scratch on him, while Yuta was just spitting out of his mouth and was sent flying. When you compare that to the end, when Ishigori, of course, is like 20% HP or something, 10% cursed energy, and is on the verge of death, compared to Yuta who's like 100% HP or 90% HP, and at the very least like 90 or 100% cursed energy. So that's why they're able to go toe to toe at the end, even when Rika had gone. I hope that makes sense. Now to conclude this, Ishigori is just quite the fighter. I want to say in terms of Sukuna fingers, this guy is going to be high. His range is probably either around 11 at the very low ball, or 14 if you really want to highball him. I think he's probably somewhere in the middle, probably like 12, 13 fingers, which is still incredibly impressive. He would have no issue and no trouble at all dealing with any of the disaster curses. And here's the craziest thing, we actually never got to see Ryu Ishigori at his peak or at his strongest, and of course this is with his domain expansion. Now, as strong as you think Ishigori is, remember domain expansions at the bare minimum take you 2 whole tiers up. Well, of course this is only complete domain expansions, this is not including incomplete ones like Megami's, though in Megami's case it still takes him 1 whole tier, but completed ones are at a bare minimum 2 tiers, in some cases even more than that. So just imagine how strong you already think he is, and just make him way stronger when he uses his domain, which unfortunately we never even got to see. And the thing is, the stronger you are, the stronger and more refined and just better your domain is, so Lord knows just how deadly and overpowered his domain is going to be. Yeah, kind of crazy, we never even got to see him as max. And again, one thing that I always get is that Yuta beat Uro and Ishigori in a 2v1 or a 3v1 of Kuroushi. Thing is, this is just objectively false in every sense and every aspect. It was a free-for-all. If you want my full analysis on that, please don't talk about that in this video, on the whole free-for-all subject, or maybe Yuta was taking on multiple people, which objectively, by the way, is false. If you actually want to talk about that or discuss that, or at the very least get my whole thoughts on that, because I haven't actually explained why, check out my Yuta is overrated video. I know that's a negative title, but in reality, I'm actually praising Yuta, and most of the video is just me analyzing Sendai and that whole fight there. So yeah, check that out if you're interested in that. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. If you enjoyed this video, or you like videos like these, let's say like Jujutsu Kaisen, versus battle, scaling, reviews, discussions, theories, please do be sure to subscribe. I have a ton of JJK content just like this on channel. And of course, thank you to all the members, as always. You guys super clutch, and you guys make these stuff possible, so thank you. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you've watched this far, you're an absolute legend, and let me know your thoughts on Ishigori in the comments down below. Just keep it respectful, and I'd love to see what you guys think. But yeah, see you later, and have a nice day. Bye.